What is going on, everybody? So today we're going to talk about PCTBs, regular ETBs, and booster boxes because I stumbled upon a thread in the Pokemon investing subreddit where people were talking about this and they're comparing regular ETBs to booster boxes and talking about liquidity and talking about ROI. And some people were saying booster boxes were still king. And honestly, it made me think about over the past year or 2 years or so, are ETBs actually starting to compete with booster boxes? So today I went in and I looked at basically every SVR set that's over a year old or about a year old. I know I threw Twilight Masquerade in here and that's about 51 weeks old, but I threw it in here anyway. So we're going to look at these and just see how everything compares. And I'm going to give my thoughts on where you should still be investing most of your money. Now, there's one thing I'm going to point out right at the beginning, and honestly, it's not super important, but I just want to touch on it because I know someone will probably call me out on it. Twilight Masquerade for the PCTB, you can see here, like all the prices are going to be from May 18th, 2024, and then May 18th, 2025, which is today, and then ROI over the past year. But for the Twilight Masquerade ETB, I put $60 in there just because since it's 51 weeks old, the TCG Player graph, if I can find it here, is still kind of skewed from pre-release of this box, the PC version. So you could have bought it like $80. And honestly, most people could have bought this for $60 on the Pokemon Center. So I just put in $60. It's really not going to make that big of a difference to the data. Honestly, it's probably the worst performing set in terms of like the mainline sets. Maybe Temporal Forces is actually worse, but it's not super relevant to the video, but I just wanted to point it out. And we'll go through this fairly fast because most of you guys can just look at this chart and see kind of where we're going with this. But SV base over the past year, you're up about 116.67%. I also didn't realize, honestly, I could have just thrown the number from TCG Player in here, but I used an ROI calculator. So if any of these are off slightly, it's going to be embarrassing. But 116.67%, Paldea Evolved 132.07% over the past year. And I will touch on something else here in a second. Obsidian Flames, 143.57% ROI, 106.79 for Paradox Rift. That sounds like a radio number, honestly. Temporal Forces, 99.13%. The worst performing box, I think, booster box over the past year from the first 6 sets of SVR. And then Twilight Masquerade, 125.90. One thing I wanted to point out here, though, and this is going to be important, I think, when we go into the next kind of downturn or lull in the hobby, is people get really worried about what to invest in and in terms of liquidity, what is going to sell in the future. Here is my tip for you guys right now that I think you could apply in the future is just pay attention when we are in a lull, what boxes start to pull ahead of the other ones. So when you look at this data, right, you look at the booster boxes, the first 6 sets, and remember, when Twilight Masquerade came out, we were still not really in a super popular place in the hobby, but you can see that Paldea Evolved is already like 20% in front of any other box at the time. That should have been a fairly strong indicator that Paldea Evolved was going to be better than these other sets. Same thing when you look at the ETBs, 151 is far and away the most expensive ETB compared to every other set. Even Paldea Evolved at this point was starting to pull away from a lot of the other ones. Obsidian Flames, you had the Charmander promo as well. So there could have been signs, right, that people picked up on, and especially when you look at the PCTBs at the time. 151 was over $100. Outside of that, Paldea Evolved was, still doing fairly decent. And then SV Base was surprisingly expensive. Which, I mean, maybe that was an indicator for some people that these were rare or you should have been picking these up, whatever. But I'd say the main ones would have been, okay, 151, yeah, this seems obvious. Paldea Evolved, okay. And then even Paldean Fates, those sets, it seemed obvious for some, but maybe it should have been more obvious for more people that these were probably going to be some of the better performing sets from the SV era, just based on where prices were at the time. But anyways, when we look at the booster boxes, the average ROI is about 121%, 120.69 to be exact there. When we look at regular ETBs, the SV base is up about 80%. The Paldea Evolved one's 137, 138%. Obsidian Flames, I think, is the best performing one, 157 almost. Paradox Rift, 121. And I just took the Roaring Moon. I didn't look at both of them for Paradox Rift. Same thing with Temporal Forces. I just took the most expensive one, up 93.98%. And then Twilight Masquerade, 113.61%. Surprising for the regular ETB there, considering the PC version isn't doing that great. When you look at the overall ROI, you're getting 153.03%, and that's including 151 regular ETBs, which were up 272% almost. and then Palday and Fates up 249%. So with the specialty sets in there, you're at 153.03. But again, the booster boxes, we aren't counting specialty sets because they don't have one. So without 151 and Palday and Fates, you have an ROI of 117.25%, which honestly is very close to the booster box of 120, almost 121%. In times past, these numbers probably would have been a little bit further apart, but even if they were this close, I probably still would have advocated for buying booster boxes more so than ETBs, just based on the fact that you're going to have to sell 4 times the amount of ETBs on average to sell the same dollar amount essentially in terms of booster boxes. However, one thing that I really didn't factor in that much back then was that ETBs sell at a much faster rate than booster boxes. That is just the reality. Looking at eBay's secondary market data, even ETBs like Shining Fates, 9 to 10 of them are selling per day on eBay over the past month or so, even up to like 11 or 12 at some point. So even though you'd have to sell 4 times the amount normally for ETBs, they're probably going to sell faster than booster boxes at times. So really going forward, if I see a decent set, especially if it's a specialty set, I'm going to be very aggressive buying ETBs at this point. That's what I'm doing with Prismatic now. I wish I would have done that with 151, you live and you learn. Same thing with Palday and Fates. I wish I had more of that than I did at the time, but it is what it is. I think going forward, Prismatic's going to present a very good opportunity for a lot of you guys to buy ETBs at a decent price. Depending on the reveals we get for the Black Bolt and White Flare sets as well, those could be interesting plays maybe in 2026, 2027. Hopefully at that time, it's going to be much easier to get product, and you're also just going to see a more normalized market where it'll be easier for you to make decisions when it comes to investing. I think a lot of people right now are hoarding cash, and that's fine, but it's just good when we get into a market where people are going to be back spending kind of at a healthy rate again, I'd say. This really isn't a super sustainable market that we're in, if any of that, what I just said, makes sense. But the last thing I want to talk to you guys about in this video is the PCTBs, because these are a new kind of gimmick that Pokemon's released over the past couple of years. So when we start with SV Bays, these are up 161.75%. This is the Miraidon version. Again, just looking at the most expensive one, the Miraidon, little bit behind. Paldea Evolved up 291.36%. Very impressive over the past year. Obsidian Flames, 366.45% growth. Most of that is from the Charmander promo. Crazy. Paradox Rift, the Roaring Moon, about 100% gain there. Temporal Force is 154%. That has the Flutter Mane promo in there. Twilight Masquerade, these got reprinted, and again, the pump up here, someone tried to attempt buying these out. That didn't really work too well, did it? These are down 5.25%, but again, like that's, factoring in 124.59. You could have bought these for $60. So you're close to about 100% gain, honestly, realistically for most people who bought those. 151 up 318.85%. These were already over $100 a year ago. And then Palday and Fates, PC versions up 195.96%. So clearly, PCTBs are doing a lot better than booster boxes and regular ETBs over the past year. The complete average, if we take the specialty sets, is 211.57%. Without 151 and Palday and Fates, you're at 196.3%. That's still a lot higher than the booster boxes. Now, again, one thing that I've loved about doing the spreadsheet is that for the PCTBs, you can see how slow they actually sell. They really do not sell at a decent pace compared to regular ETBs and booster boxes. So in the future, when it comes to an investment strategy around all of these things, I think it's still worth getting PCTBs at MSRP. I think that's like a no-brainer that everyone should be trying. Again, for a lot of people, especially you guys that are very successful in life, it's probably not worth it spending like 2, 3, 4 hours in a queue just to try and get one box. Even for me at this point, like I'm really not doing that. Like if I can get in within like 5 to 10 minutes, great. But I'm not going to sit there for hours just trying to get one box. It's just not worth it for me. Regular ETBs in the future, pay attention to what sets are pulling away from the other ones. Again, if we go back a year, it should have been quite obvious. And it was for some people, it wasn't for me. I know a lot of other investors didn't pull the trigger either. 151, you probably should have just been buying cases of those regular ETBs. Even Palday and Fates, based on this data, it was already pulling away from most of those regular SV era sets. Maybe should have been assigned to buy a little bit of it. And then, booster boxes, same deal. I think you should still be getting a lot of booster boxes. They still are the gold standard when it comes to Pokemon investments, in my opinion. But things can change over time, so we should always be looking at the data, looking at what's changing, and just, consider other options, right? We need to evolve as investors as Pokemon collecting and investing evolves as well. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm curious about this. How many of you have a sealed case of 151 regular ETBs? I'm genuinely curious how many people bought into these early and still have them. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Stay safe wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next one.